Hello guys, through Jerry speaking. Welcome down to 2020 day number 82, and today we're gonna be eating pizza, and then we'll be doing not one, not two, but 3 projects today. So let's do it now and see what we got, shall we? So we got tastes good. Wow, that was easy. Okay. I'll be right back. Welcome back to LJPCBM 2020, day number A2. I'm so sorry for the huge delay. I just came back from making these follies because I have no idea what the attention to it. So let's see. Oh my god. Nope. I don't know what else to do, but you know, let's go to the new tab, go to YouTube, and load this thing. And oh man, what else am I gonna do? Oh, excuse my birthday. But anyway, it's time for Purple Roads episode number. Oh, excuse me, burped it. But anyway, that's 17. But anyway, let's go ahead and close this up, even though I want to quit this anyway. Library. I was originally going to do reaction videos to Day 3000's content, but today wasn't the day to react to Day 3000's until 2 more episodes later. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, though, I will react to Purple Roads episode number 16, because I have no idea what else to do. So, just be prepared for that. So, there you go. But anyway, let me go ahead and quit this, because even though I have to finish off for 2 reasons. One, I don't know what else to do now. And 2, quitting this. It's good enough, but, you know, that's just me. Quitting iMovie, yeah. And then quitting this. Let me see how much I'm going to quit. Photos. Firefox. Briefly delete. We still have 29 more days. Delete all of it. Check. And all you have to do is do that. Oh man, what do I want to do? Minimize this. And force quit. Nothing. Okay. Let's go to screen flow now. And oh, excuse me. Wow. Okay. This will not take me long, so. But anyway, let me see here. New uploads are coming, so if Lucas did not have his by tonight, then I'll have to do his tomorrow. So let's see what happens. But anyway, it's time for another episode. Hello guys, Sue Jerry speaking. Welcome to LJPCBM Reacts, episode number 434. And before we begin this episode of the reaction video series, I will have to make an announcement real quick, okay? During this time, I will push back the Day of 3000's Internet Archive account content videos till from 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 this episode to two episodes later because of difficulties somehow with what's gonna happen tonight. So there you go. So anyway, let's react to Purple Roads, episode 16, French George Clemens, beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm Carrie Stinson, and my journey through life has been quite an adventure.
Wow.
For over 20 years, I played Barney the Dinosaur on tour, and 7 seasons of the hugely popular TV show, Barney and Friends. Now, my journey is to bring together friends and guests from all over the entertainment world for inspiring and at times amusing behind-the-scenes conversation. I'm Carrie Stinson, and this is Purple Roads.
Okay.
Welcome to another Purple Roads. I am so excited you're here. We've got such a special guest today. I am so excited to get into this wonderful conversation. I real quickly want to thank our sponsor, Infusion HF70 Plus, for sponsoring and being with us here on Purple Roads. So without taking any more break, I'm so excited I can't stand it. We have Francois Clemens here today from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. How are you, Francois?
Wow. Well, I am just fine. It's getting warmer up here. I love spring when the flowers show you, at least they turn green. So I love it up here in Vermont. I've been able to go outside and walk now. The snow is all gone. And, I'm not one of those guys who go skiing and cross country and climbing rocks and all that stuff. So I like it when it's the regular sidewalk you can walk. And I love it up here. I have lots of friends. I just am sorry everybody left. So I'm all alone practically, except for my neighbors,
Well, you're here with me today, and I'm so excited about that. So I want to there's so much to talk about with you. I want to get into a little bit before Mr. Rogers. What were you doing before him? What was your career leading into your days with Mr. Rogers?
Well, you have to remember, I was pretty young. When I met Mr. Rogers, I was 24.
Okay.
So I was still in college. I went to Oberlin, then I went to grad school, and I met him during my first year of grad school.
Wow.
So, in my opinion, I was working on a career. I certainly had shown that I could sing opera by winning a couple of contests. I've been encouraged by members of my school committee at college. I sung with several choirs.
Wow.
So singing was something that I did from probably the time I came out of my mother's womb, I always say.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because I've never not sung. So my great-grandmother sang, my grandmother sang, and my mother definitely sang. And I used to imitate them when I was a child around the house. If they were sweeping or mopping or ironing, whatever duties they were doing, washing dishes or washing, I imitated them and I sang. So it became very, very natural for me. And I was encouraged by my aunts and uncles and cousins by the dozens. And
when did you get into singing opera?
Well, that's the irony of it. I've always sung opera because I used to imitate Mario Lanza. Those great tenors that you hear on, the Telephone Hour and a couple of television programs where I heard, and a social worker heard me sing when I was like in 10th grade, I think. And she said, "Do you want to study and really do something with your voice?" And I said, "Yes, of course, I'd love to." And there was a little back and forth there because I also wanted to play the piano.
Okay.
And I could read music, but I couldn't really deliver. So she and my mother put their heads together and they decided that I should study voice. Wow. So I've been singing opera since then. I started out listening to Jussi Björling, the great Italian singers, of Italian opera. He was not Italian. And of course the great Caruso. I simply loved that sound, and I could reproduce it without, it was not effortful. I just opened my mouth, and I started singing, and that's what came out. I started singing some of the lyric tenor parts from the opera, from La Traviata, from Elixir of Love, there were certain ones that just seemed to be perfect for my young voice. And I'm very happy I had the teacher that I had, because he was a tenor also. So he could hear in my voice what was in his voice. And he encouraged me to continue to work on this repertoire.
Wow.
I loved it right from the beginning. So I sang parts of Carmen, which were a little heavy for me. I never did it with orchestra, and I wouldn't do it with orchestra. But as a young person learning to sing in French and with an accompaniment, I did very well. In fact, a lot of the repertoire I could do very well with a piano or only with orchestra in concert. I did not have an extensive stage career in opera, maybe about 12, 13 years. And then my career moved steadily towards art songs and American Negro spirituals. It seems I had a real gift for the drama, the dramatic on stage. You know, one person expressing one feeling or whatever, one character in a song, and then another song and another song. I loved doing that. And my teacher encouraged me because it seems as though I showed up.
Right.
I can use that phrase.
Sure.
When I was singing a song, something happened, she said to me, that was pretty interesting and pretty decent. So she really, really encouraged me to follow this leading that I like to sing song literature. The other thing is I love the poetry. It's really, many times, Langston Hughes or some of the romantic, poets, Keats, Shelley. I love that it's frequently high-class poetry. I guess the other thing was, in our country, a black tenor, I'm a lyric tenor,
Okay.
and a black tenor has a lot of problems in the opera houses because we still have a lot of racism, a lot of prejudice, and so people didn't necessarily want to hire me to do a romantic lead opposite a lovely white soprano or alto mezzo-soprano. And it was silly because the singers never felt that way, and I've never heard an audience member say that. But there were producers, directors, and what have you, who simply did not give me an audition, and they did what we call in the business type casting, which I think is something that should go along with the electoral college and be done with it.
What time in the country was that? When was this happening?
Well, 1965,
Okay.
64.
Wow.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was very, very active in our civil rights struggle in America, and so was I. It was very important to me. There were so many fronts in which issues concerning lynching of black men and killing of black children in churches. There were 4 of them shot down there in Jackson, Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, the assassination of our beloved John Kennedy. Oh, my goodness. And then Robert Kennedy. And then Martin Luther King Jr. So it was during the height of the civil rights struggle. There were also riots. Lord have mercy. Everywhere. When Dr. King was killed, I think every major inner city in America had a full-fledged riot.
Wow.
And that was not something I'm proud of, but it's a fact.
Sure.
That's the era in which I grew up in.
And then that's about the time you met Fred Rogers?
I had met him already.
Okay.
But it's one of those ironies of life that when Dr. King was murdered in Memphis, I was at my home in Pittsburgh, and suddenly the doorbell rang. I had no idea who it was, and it was Fred Rogers, and the organist at the church. I had a church job at Third Presbyterian Church.
Wow.
I was the tenor soloist, and the organist was John Lively. He was the one who hired me, and he was the one who introduced me to Fred Rogers. So I'll always be grateful to my friendship and musical relationship with John Lively.
Wow.
Well, there was Fred standing at the door saying, "Get your luggage. You're coming with me." I had barely met him about 3 months, 4 months before. So you can understand how it was out of, I thought, well, what is this? What, out of character.
Right.
For him to be such a caring, I didn't know him as well as I do now.
Sure.
Or I knew him years later.
Sure.
When his caring nature was so real and was so enveloping, embracing, because the way he said that to me, I thought, he means for me to get my luggage and follow him. And, because my inclination was, well, why should I? I live here.
Right.
I'm at home. Well, I lived about 4 or 5 blocks from this part of, they call it the Hill District in Pittsburgh.
Sure.
And I mean, you could see the smoke. If you went outside of my house and went upstairs to the roof, you could look down there and you could see the smoke where they were burning buildings and businesses. It was very, very sad because, when stuff like that happens, it touches all of us. But
Sure.
it's almost like what I call a kind of political suicide. You're striking out at your own family, your own businesses, moms and pops who have struggled and worked very hard. Sometimes they have a little bodega or a little flower shop or a little, shoe repair, cleaners to go to in the community. They had stayed in that community. And here they were, everybody was suffering when Dr. King was assassinated.
Wow.
But burning the buildings because you were angry, to me made no sense whatsoever.
Wow.
So he comes and gets you. So did you pack your bags and go?
Oh, I certainly did. I packed them, and I stayed with him for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
Because there was lots of activity. That night you could hear gunshots going off. I don't think I realized how serious the danger was.
Wow.
Being new, I'd never been in a situation like that in my life, and so it was very threatening, but at the same time, I was a little naive because we read about it in the newspaper, and they had tanks going up and down the street, up the Hill District, and the police were there arresting people and putting the fire department. It was a major community event.
Wow.
I'll call it that. And then after that, they had to have a whole series of discussions and civil rights issues with, the NAACP.
Sure.
Some of the local ministers got involved. I remember Dr. Green was his last name. He was one of the black ministers who had gone to the same seminary where Fred had gone, and they were friends. They knew each other. Well, this Dr. Green took a leadership role in helping the community to get reconciled. Because when you have situations like that, a lot of the problems that were festering come out into the open. And there were issues of police brutality at that time, and issues of a certain kind of segregation. There was redlining being done by the real estate people. In fact, that's how I had my apartment in that area. It's called Shenley Heights in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Wow.
And I couldn't get an apartment down close to Carnegie Mellon. Every time I went, I look in the newspaper or the college paper for a place to live. I'd get to the house and they'd tell me that the apartment was rented. And that happened about 10 or 12 times. And I was staying with my Oberlin College roommate. His mother and dad lived in Penn Hills outside of Pittsburgh, not far at all. And they said, come stay with us while you look for a place to live. So his name was Daryl, and I stayed at Daryl's house. And the next day I would drive into the city and, start looking around. I did not know Pittsburgh as a city.
Wow.
And to make a long story short, his mother says to me, Francois, how long have you been looking for this apartment? 2 or 3 days? And I said, yes. She said, well, have you tried the black newspaper? And I was kind of stunned. I said, no. Why should I? And she said, come with me. And she literally took me by the hand. And we got in the car. We drove to a certain area, Oakland in Pittsburgh. We got the black newspaper called the Pittsburgh Courier. And we brought it home. And we sat down and went through the same process. And I'll be damned, but the first place I went looking for an apartment, they rented it to me. And then we have one of those real soulful conversations about how real life is and the issues that a black man like myself will have to deal with. I'm going to Carnegie Mellon University, in fact, on a full scholarship.
Wow.
But I couldn't live in the neighborhood because the real estate agents discriminated against black people.
With all that going on, because I know when you got in with Mr. Rogers, Was it his idea to make you a police officer?
Mm.
'Cause I think that's a fascinating story.
It's a totally his idea. It made me very, very, very unhappy. It shocked me
Mm-hmm.
when he first mentioned and brought the subject up, because I had such a different idea of what policemen did because of the reality of what I grew up like in Youngstown, Ohio, in the ghetto.
Sure.
And they were very abusive. They took advantage. There are a lot of things that, if you want the details, they're in my book. You know, I just finished a memoir that's going to be published on May 5th.
Wow.
I'll be down in New York in case anybody wants to come down and see.
Well, we definitely
Anyway,
wanted to come see you, and we will put the links to it. We will help you get that book out. 'Cause I want to read it. I think that'll be fascinating.
Yeah, it's something I can do in the book review some other time. Continue on.
Thank you. And when I talk about that in the book, I try to give a little bit more insight into what kind of a position I felt I had been placed in. But this is a great opportunity to be to have this opportunity to learn so much around this man who was proving to be a real shaker, you know, in the Pittsburgh scene. Everybody knew him. They didn't know about the program yet because it was so new, brand new. But they knew about Fred and knew about some of his ideas. He had spoken to some friends and some people at the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary.
Wow.
So I tried to share with him what a profoundly repugnant idea it was for me to put on a policeman's uniform. And
Wow.
I just didn't see myself making that kind of an adjustment. I felt that I was very happy I could sing on the show. I said, well, come on. I am a singer, and I have a bachelor's degree. I'm going to get a master's. Why can't I be Professor Clemens or something like that? Architect or a manager of some business or other. I don't know. I named a bunch of things that I thought were what I call respectable.
Sure.
And he started talking to me about helpers.
Wow.
I'll never forget how that word really made an impact, helpers. And he said, you know, when young children are lost or when they're separated from their parents or they're hurt, the first thing they do is look around for somebody, you know, they're helpless, to help them. And he said, I tend to think of policemen as a helper. And he said, you know, there are probably lots and lots of people in America, and particularly black people, who think like you do. But maybe we could show them another humane side of the policeman and show the policeman doing things in the community that are positive, like everybody else. Well, he continued to talk, and he made quite an impression on me, and I like to feel like I'm a helper. That's my personality. So when he mentioned that, he got my attention. And we talked about it. It was a very, I'd say maybe a couple of months, we had these intense conversations about what kind of a role I would be doing on his program. First of all, I was very happy. He asked me to be a regular. The value of being on that program on a regular basis cannot be measured because there I was, 24 years old, living in Pittsburgh, and there were no black actors who appeared regularly on children's television. And I began to get a perspective of what show business was like. And the mountain that I had to climb and other black actors and actresses had to climb, so that to have the opportunity to come on that program as often as it turns out was a great, great, great honor, distinction, impetus to my career. I would say it probably made my career. I built a lot of things around it, but for me, it was a focal. Unlike some of the other characters from my favorite, Betty Aberlin and Mr. Feely, they were there all the time.
Right.
And my way of thinking, that was a full-time job open to them, but I don't think that option was open to me. And so I went on to New York, and when I announced that I was going to New York, Fred said, but you'll come back and visit, won't you? Oh, I said, you want me to come back? And I thought he was going to say, I'm through with you. And he said, oh, no, we want you to come back. And we sat down, and once again, we had these discussions which helped me to gain a deeper, richer feeling about this friendship, that it wasn't just about doing a job and about money. He was interested in me, Francois Clemens, as a human being on many different levels. As you know, there are other
Sure.
subjects that will be discussed that we also were discussing. So I thought, well, you know, this man, he's not rash. He's not trying to force me. His logic is very powerful. Very powerful. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say on that subject. So, had you ever done anything with children before, with children's TV or educating children? Was this a new experience for you?
It was an entirely new experience because I had won the Metropolitan Opera auditions in Pittsburgh, and I saw myself on the operatic stage. Well, there are certainly operas done for children, and Leonard Bernstein, the great conductor of the New York Philharmonic, was making quite a reputation for himself doing children's concerts. So, of course, I understood the importance. There were certain composers who wrote works just for children. I had learned a couple of them. Menotti is a Mall in the Night Visitors. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
There's a lot of material which opera and concert composers put together for children. But I didn't necessarily see myself in that role. I'm a romantic tenor. I sing Mozart. I sing young Verdi heroes, and some of the other lighter repertoire, Rossini, Donizetti. And so I thought that's what I was going to be doing. I had no idea what I was in for. It was a very naive decision on my part. Anyway, to make a long story short, what I found fascinating was David Newell was there the whole time. And
That played Mr. McFeely.
yes, Mr. McFeely. He was a rock, and he was so helpful to everybody. Well, he certainly was to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like a big brother. He's about 10 years older than I am. And from the moment I came into the studio and met the producers and the other people who contributed, there was David.
Wow.
And I give him credit for helping to smooth the way. Sometimes it was kind of difficult because being on the operatic stage is not the same as being on the in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn a whole different technique, a way of singing. In fact, what was really different is that it was so intimate. It took me a long time to become accustomed to being so intimate in public. I was used to being intimate in my personal relationships, but as a performer, singer, reaching out to young children watching the program, I was not accustomed to that kind of sweet innocence and caring. And I watched Fred. Believe me, I watched him like a hawk. And so I did. So one day I asked him, what was he doing? What was he thinking? And once again, as he was so generous, he spent a lot of hours explaining to me how he felt about his ministry. And the fact that the distance between him and that camera was a sacred space.
Wow.
I never heard anything like that before. What do you mean, sacred space? And he took the time to explain this to me. This was his calling. This was his anointment.
Wow.
And so he took it very seriously. When he got there in front of the camera and was talking to those kids, there was a transformative quality to him. And many, many, many people who finally got a chance to watch him and watch him work were totally convinced of something about this man. Because he was not a lively personality, you know.
Uh-huh.
He was very dull, as a matter of fact. No, he wasn't
The opposite
boring.
of you.
He wasn't like me at all. I'm the extrovert, he's the introvert. In fact, we are a perfect marriage. I used to tell people our relationship was made in heaven because from the day I met him, I never stopped talking and he never stopped listening. And that was just fine with me. And it was a joke, but it was true.
Wow.
He just had infinite patience. You know, I don't want to get all soppy here on you,
Sure.
but I had never had anybody take the time, the patience to get to know me, what I consider an adult getting to know a young person, and then offering suggestions about my life, ideas that he thought would be positive, how I felt about certain things. Nobody cared many times from where I came from. They didn't care. Certainly didn't care at school. By that I mean high school and grade school. They were very, very segregated inside the building. Outside, it looked like a normal neighborhood. But once you got inside, black kids went one way, Jewish kids went another way, and white kids, or the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, if you want to call that, they went another way. Sometimes there was some mixture, but not very often. So there I was finally in Pittsburgh, and I was asking the big questions. You know, who am I? What is this civil rights stuff? What are black people doing in America? And what's our history about it? Something had awakened inside of me.
Right.
And I was finally living in a big city where I could ask certain people, I could research at a big Carnegie library. The University of Pittsburgh was just as important to me as Carnegie Mellon, which is where I was in school. And then I had references like Fred Rogers, who would listen and, in my opinion, give me very, very thoughtful answers to the kinds of questions that I was asking about growing up, going through puberty, dealing with some of the racial issues that I know he never had to deal with.
Right.
But I had to deal with them very, very often. You know, we talked about those things very openly.
Wow.
And there were times we were in the studio. I was there to work. And he would come over or something. And he and I would walk a little bit away from the rest of the cast or the lighting guys. They were super guys. I loved working with them. But sometimes their silliness got on my nerves.
Wow.
I'm a very serious guy because I have a different background and I know poverty and lack in a way that they don't. They were all white
Sure.
and I was black. So there were very different roads that we had traveled, but I adored them and they adored me and I love them. But that silly stuff, I didn't want any parts of it. So I was talking with Fred about some of these things that was bothering me.
Uh-huh.
And in the process, I discovered that he was going to the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, and he was very good at explaining some of the things and questions that I had about the Bible.
Wow.
I'm not a traditional Christian. I do not want people to misunderstand. I'm not an atheist, and the best thing I say is that I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and I believe that God is everywhere, in everything, loves everybody. It's unconditional love. And that's been my motivation. As a matter of fact, Fred was the one who awakened that spirit inside of me by his relationship to me. He was so generous, tirelessly kind and loving. I can't think of any other way to characterize it. And I was getting the real thing, and I appreciated that. This was not a frivolous man. And there I was in the inner circle. I used to ask myself, what did you do? Who are you? No, I'm serious. A little black guy from the ghetto, no money, wrong blood. I didn't have the lineage, on and on. But there I was.
So I want to talk about the unconditional love because, you know, I learned that through Barney for 20 years that I was on that show. And the importance of unconditional love and the importance for children to understand that. It obviously has affected your whole life.
Yes, it affected my entire, still does. And
And mine too.
Spouse, pardon?
I said, and mine too. Learning that because I didn't understand that either, and I learned it through that wonderful purple dinosaur, and the importance of unconditional love. What have you found from what you did on that show, teaching unconditional love to the children?
Wow.
Well, the first thing I find is that the children are not so judgmental. It's their parents or some cousins or some other authority figures. Children give this unconditional love all the time. It is, I think, it's a natural part of all of us when we're born.
Yes.
But then we're born in certain houses and societies and cultures, and they require that we behave in a certain way. If you don't behave a certain way, you're not worthy of being loved. Well, Fred said that's a hogwash, and helped me to understand that God's love is always available to everyone, including Francois. And that was a very important step. You know, I had never had, I write about it in my autobiography because it was so profound to me to have this. He was a white man who had money and status and intelligence and sensitivity, you know, all the good things of life. And there I was struggling, wondering if I had a right to be here, wondering why was I here. And he embraced me as a surrogate father, and he never ever let go. We talked about everything you could imagine, because as you know, I'm an extrovert.
Right.
People learn that already.
Sure. Yeah.
I never shut up.
Well, when we called you and got your voice message of you singing, it's one of my.
Yes.
You put a smile on everyone's face.
Oh my.
Thank you so much. I started that as a kind of fun thing, and here I'm in Middlebury at the college. So many of my students asked me to do that when I do their answering machine, and I was a little shocked at first, but it's become a thing that I do. At our church, we had an auction. I raised several $1,000s. It surprises me.
That's wonderful.
People, I just improvise it. Everything when I do I just start singing, and I don't shut up until they say, "Okay, the tape has run out. There's no more room. Shut up."
Love it.
So I like spontaneity, fun things like that. So I've done about 40 or 50 of I call them my cosmic children.
Yeah.
Wow.
They've asked me to do their sound machine, and I like doing that.
Oh, it's wonderful. So I want to ask you, when did you realize the positive effect you were having on children for being on that show? I watched you as a kid, and you brought a lot of joy to my life. When did you realize the effect you were having to children?
Well, I don't know quite why it happened this way,
Wow.
or why Fred did it. But I did 4 shows in the beginning, I guess. You know, that 1968.
Wow.
It's still in black and white. And over the summer, he got in touch with me and let me know he wanted me to do some more. I thought, "You want me to do more?" And he said, yes. He had already gotten positive feedback from my presence on the show. I said, "Well, all I did was sing a couple of spirituals." And he said, "Something transformative, Francois, happens when you sing. And people are moved, very deeply touched, even if it's just saying you have a beautiful voice." But he convinced me to continue to follow in that direction. And so I said, "Well, I'll come back for some more and see what else I have to offer." Then I began to realize that the children who were writing these notes and sending them in to Fred were black and white and Spanish and Asian. They were everything.
Right.
I thought, my goodness, this program is going all over the country. And that's when I woke up. And I began to realize that I was bringing something to the program I had no idea. I did not intend to. I just showed up. I was the right person, the right chemistry. Because a lot of times I think that's what happens, that you have something to do in this life, and we find we have different ways of getting there. And I write about it because it was such a unique experience for me to feel that I have a partnership with Fred Rogers. He
Wow.
and I did many, many, many things together. As Fred, he had other partners with Lady Aberlin, with Mr. McFeely. I consider us his cosmic children. And really I do, that we were drawn there because there was something needed to complete the experience of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Wow.
And what I realized is that he had no real understanding of poor people. He really did not. He said to me, "What does it feel like, Francois, to go to bed hungry at night?" Well, I thought, he didn't know what that feels like? What kind of guy is he? And again, we all know what it feels like to be hungry. And you go to bed hungry and wake up the next morning hungry. You know how we're having this episode in our society now,
Right.
and one of the things I'm concerned about is that there's no school. Where do the kids eat?
Right.
This is a serious issue. You cannot, in my opinion, teach a hungry child. You must feed them first. So, I told him what it felt like. I shared it as much as I really could. He was a very empathetic person. So he was ready to learn. He was not haughty. He was not proud. He was not falsely, built himself up. Because he became my student.
Right.
On these issues of the ghetto. How could he possibly know what I knew?
Wow.
So
were you surprised that he wanted to listen, that he wanted to learn?
He was hungry. He was as hungry to learn about me and what my parents had been like, because I was a traumatized kid. My parents fought physically. It was the worst nightmare you could ever imagine.
Oh,
and I didn't
God.
go into therapy about it until I was about, 24, 25. Fred was one of the ones who said, maybe you should go into therapy, Francois. It's like I had this bleeding gash in my back that was constantly allowing the vital need to escape. And he said, there are issues that you've had as a child that you have not resolved. You should sit down and talk to someone professional about. I said, what? Well, I grew up and you went to the to a psychiatrist because you were crazy. But he gave me a very, very different perspective on how you work to heal. And part of it is being aware of what's causing the anger, what's causing the pain. They were deep adult attitudes. So and when I used to speak with him about these issues, he and I would, pull ourselves away so that we could have a very deep conversation about things like washing Peter's feet, the disciples' feet, in that little pool of water.
Right.
And the prodigal son. We talked about the prodigal son a lot. We also talked about my anointment. I have an anointment also. And he was the one who said to me, you're a minister too. I said, well, I'm not going to seminary. I had had enough of school. And in my opinion, that kind of commitment and involvement meant going up into the pulpit and preaching a sermon, which I didn't want any parts of that either. Now, I don't mind lecturing like you hear me now. I'm pointing to my soliloquy here.
Sure.
And
I love it. I find it fascinating.
But I don't see myself as a preacher. What I did that day, by the way, was I really met him on Good Friday. I did a concert at Third Presbyterian Church with the organist.
Okay.
Where I sang, and he never said a mumbling word, not a word, not a word. And he never said a mumbling word. So we did all of the stations of the cross, you call them.
Mm-hmm.
And the preacher would speak a phrase or a couple of verses from the Bible, and then I would sing something comparable to those. And we chose the passages. Tell me where to find him. It's about when he's escaped, they feel from the tomb, and they come and the tomb is empty. I consider that a very deep personal experience, and so these spirituals are expressing also the loneliness, the deep sense of abandonment of the slave and of my people. So I have a sense of this loss, of this deep longing, and something that was very important and central to you is suddenly gone. And were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Sometimes it causes me to tremble.
Oh my.
were you there, oh Lord, when they crucified my Lord?
You're bringing a tear to my eye, Francois. It's just so beautiful.
Thank you. That's what I did that day, and it meant that it meant a lot to me. And so when it was finished, he came up to me and he said, "Francois." Oh, they introduced us, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He said, "I've never been so touched by a Good Friday service like this. Where did you get this idea?" And I said, "Oh, I've been thinking about it for a while. I knew the spirituals, and I knew that it would just take the right church and building, right support, in order to present it. And because as soon as I presented the idea to the organist, my goodness, he thought it was the greatest idea since sliced bread, as they say. So he and I decided to do that. I have done it now about 25, 30 times, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience for me personally, because it reflects my own spiritual love for divinity. And it's one way that I can give.
Yeah.
So when did you realize the importance of music for children? I think Barney was a lot about music, and obviously you did that a lot. When did you realize that children respond to it so much?
I'm sorry, I used to see you dancing around. That's what I was. I liked it. I didn't realize how much effect it had on children until at least the second or third year. Fred began to invite me to come with him when he went to daycare centers.
Okay.
Wow.
In Pittsburgh, there was one that he went to, I think, every week. So he invited me to come there with him, and I got involved with presenting music, and we developed Clemens' studio out of that experience. And we brought the experience into the studio, set it up, and that was really one of the moments when I felt most happy, because I was not really Officer Clemens, I was a musician, Professor Clemens.
Wow.
And I eventually played many different roles, especially in the operas, He gave me a chance to do a lot of good singing, and I enjoyed it immensely. And then I did, let's see, Philip the photographer. Fill up your camera, Philip. Fill up your camera with film. Da da ba ba da ba da ba da ba da ba 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 ba. He did some songs for me like that because I had a different, younger personality.
Sure.
I wanted to do something, and that's how he tapped into it. I thought it was just wonderful to feel like I was becoming a kind of free spirit, and the things that I wanted to try, I wanted to experiment. I sang all the stuff from Porgy and Bess. There's a boat that's leaving soon for New York. Come with me. And I did that on the show. I did Summertime, which is not sporting music,
right,
but I can sing anything. So I did all of that. I had a chance to experiment. He knew and appreciated many jazz musicians, and so he had them on the program. And sometimes he would invite me to come, and other times I was not a part of it. But I was, and sometimes he would say, "You're not working, but come to the studio, Francois. Come so that you can be around us." I can't tell you what a wonderful shock that was to me when he said, "Come to Pittsburgh." I said, "Fred, but I'm not going to be filming." He says, "You don't have to be filming to come to Pittsburgh. You want to be with us? Come on."
I'm curious, what did the children think of you singing opera?
You know what I had gotten a lot of correspondence,
Sure,
where the children told me that's where they began to love opera, hearing me sing it.
Wow.
And two things, opera singer and a policeman. I said, what? So I get them fairly often now, since Morgan Neville made the great, great documentary,
yes.
I Want You to Be My Neighbor.
Yeah, which I saw in theaters. Continue
I
on.
really, really loved working with him. He was so sensitive, and he was so, well, here we go again. I had 2 strokes, and I honestly didn't think I was going to be able to do it. Because the first time he called, he said, "We're out here in Los Angeles and Hollywood. Can you fly out here and film?" And I said, "No." He said, "Oh, we're so sorry. We want to work with you." And he said, "Can we call you back?" I said, "Yeah, call me in a couple of weeks to see how I feel better." And
Wow.
I had a second stroke. Are you ready? What is this? So to make a long story short,
Wow.
he said, "We're in Pittsburgh. Can you come here?" I said, "No, I can't." Finally, he said, "How about if we drive up to Vermont and can we film it in your home?" I thought, well, okay, I can throw something on here. I can get dressed, and I can, come here to my home. So that's what they did. They took this big old rental truck,
Right.
and they put all their stuff on the front porch. I had this wonderful front porch that I had built onto this home, and then they came in and moved all of my furniture. I didn't care really, but it was just interesting to see all this going on around me. So they moved it all until it was in a place where they liked it and felt the lighting was, okay, the sound was this, and then they started filming. And I just simply have to say, again, I have nothing but admiration and praise for Morgan Neville, who I think was not only very sensitive to us, the actors and actresses who had worked on the program, but to the material. He had the right touch. And he was basically telling me that it was because of his children that he decided to pay attention. What are my children watching? What's going on here? So he began to pay attention. And watching it from their perspective, he knew about the show, but watching it from their perspective gave him a different perspective and understanding of what Fred was doing. And that flooded over on me, too, when he came here to my home. He knew, and I mean that he knew how to treat me. A lot of people dealing with Mr. Rogers, they were interested in Mr. Rogers, but they were not interested in me, very frankly. It was quite a while before my ability as a singer. And then when they saw how Fred behaved with me, some of them took a second look and said, "Oh, who is this man that is with Mr. Rogers?" And there were several things like that happened, and people took a second look, a second judgment, and I began to feel as though they were treating me as a whole person. Francois Clemens was somebody, and not just an appendix who came in and did a few lines and left. All of us contributed to the fullness of that program. And now, thanks again to Morgan, I feel it's being acknowledged.
What was
articulated?
Absolutely. What was it like to tell those stories again, to bring up all those memories for you? What were the emotions you were feeling telling those stories from those days?
Well, sometimes they were sad. Sometimes they were not. You read the book, and there's some scenes I can tell you that happened in Cincinnati. That, I mean, if Fred weren't, a strong man standing there supporting me, I don't know what I would have done, because the guy there wouldn't conduct. He said, get out of the theater. We don't want any N-word. We don't want you here. Nobody else on the program had somebody say such a horrible, aggressively negative thing to them. They came and they did their job. They went home. But here I was, and he focused. He told me to get off the stage.
Wow.
Well, I was ready to go get my coat and fly back to New York. I said, I've been thrown out of worse places than this. I'm not staying here. Well, then Fred walks in the door, and Jasmine, what's going on? What's going on? And we managed to tell him, Johnny and Betty and myself and David Newell, tell him the story.
Wow.
And then Fred insists that we go back upstairs to where the orchestra is. They're literally still on stage. All of this happened while the orchestra was warming up on stage. And traditionally, when we would go out, because of my musical background, I always started the rehearsals. And there was nothing, no gimmick or anything about it. I was just ready. I woke up ready. And my voice. So I usually did my stuff first. And nobody in the group objected whatsoever. But this conductor. So Fred goes upstairs, and of course, the conductor sees Fred, and he's pawing all over. Oh, Mr. Rogers. Oh, we're so happy. Fred never said a word. He stood there. And after they calmed down, they saw that something was wrong. And he simply said to them, this is Francois Clemens. He plays Officer Clemens on our program. He travels with us. He sings. He has a beautiful voice. We love him. Wow. What did you say to him this morning? What did you feel you had to say? to Mr. Officer Clemens. Well, the conductor was mortified because he was a racist, essentially. And the idea that Mr. Rogers was reprimanding him because I asked for common courtesy. I didn't want anything special. I had a role to do. Get out of the way and let me do my part. But he wouldn't let the orchestra. He told me to get off of his stage. Well, we stood there, and he stammered and stuttered and said some things. And Fred said, I think you owe him an apology.
Really?
We do not talk to him like that. And we are not going to get accustomed to it with you.
Wow.
If you feel you cannot apologize, we understand. No one is going to force you to do what you cannot do. But we are going to pack up our stuff and go home.
Wow.
Next move is up to you.
Wow.
Well, he began to grovel, and he carried on. He touched me, and I in his lousy effort to make up for being an absolute brute. And I didn't want him to touch me, but there was Fred saying, here's the peace offering. We must accept however he extends it. I wanted to pop him in his mouth. I'm not,
Wow.
Fred was the nice one.
Right.
No, because I had learned how to survive.
Sure.
It wasn't quite the way he had learned. So there I was, and I said, okay, I accept your apology, but I think you should be very careful in the future how you speak to everybody, not just black people or white people, but any person that you meet. You don't know who they are.
Still.
And because Fred was there, and the ensemble, Lady Aberlin, Mr. McKee, they were very, very supportive. Johnny Costa, we moved right on through it, and I tried to put this guy out of my head. That was a very, very powerful negative experience.
Mm-hmm.
It had its good side, of course.
Sure.
I ran into stuff like that in the business. There were times I write about it a little bit in the book when PBS, was not always in New York or Chicago or
Right.
Los Angeles, in these very urban settings where everybody could get it. It was really an educational station on these college campuses. And a lot of times the college campuses were not available to black people, minorities. And so they weren't watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So both sides were doing their business. And one day I said to Fred, how about if I do a tour around America and share with people what a wonderful, wonderful program I think this is, what a wonderful outreach I think they're doing, and that it's not about color.
Wow.
It's really, really about humanity, our relationship to one another, the health of our children. And he said he thought that was a damn good idea. So he said, write me a page, Francois. You just give me a page analysis of what you're doing, what you want to do. And I did. And I went on about a 8-9 month tour of America. People don't know about this. I wrote about it in my book. And I went to black churches, black community centers. I went to daycare centers. I went to concert halls. I sang everywhere. I sang his songs, and I sang spirituals. And then I did something that I'm very seldom proud of, a certain kind of cleverness that I have.
Okay.
But I bought about 5,000 postcards.
Wow.
And I gave them to those ladies and those guys running those daycare centers. And I said, would you please send this to Mr. Rogers and tell him what a nice time you had, how gracious our experience together, and perhaps even tell him you might watch the show again in the future. Well, they turned that into such a wonderful project. All the kids drew pictures of me and Mr. Rogers and Mr. McFeely. They turned it,
Sure.
the daycare center turned it into
Yeah.
such an experience. And they sent the pictures to Fred. And when I would go I said, where are those? Because I'd look at the pictures and there was a black person in the pictures now.
Yeah.
It was me. Yes, the kids, because I was going to blacks daycare centers, and the teachers were saying, Mr. Clemens is black, Mr. Rogers is white. That's all. So here's a crayon. Here are some crayons we can put together and see if we can draw him as a black person.
Wow.
The kids they see color, they just don't see it negatively.
Sure. Absolutely.
So we got busy, and those postcards, those packets, those 11 by, 9 by 11, 8 by 11, packets began to come into the station with projects that the schools had done all over the country. I think that helped to turn the tide as far as black people being aware of Mr. Rogers and watching the program. We did that 3 years in a row. I had a wonderful accompanist travel with me. And you see, black people frequently are very spontaneous. And the fact that I could sing in church, sing Precious Lord, sing whatever it was, that was going on, they loved that. So you win the teachers over.
Right.
And then I could sing all the other songs that were children's songs. And Mr. Rogers' songs, of course, all of them. The kids, it was a huge success. So he said, let's do it next year, Francois. Let's get the publicity company that handled it, the promotion, all that stuff. And we did it a second time. And darn it, we had just the most wonderful success. And we finally did it the third time. After that, I felt we had really, really turned a tide in terms of the general public, because we went to every major city: Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, Atlanta, Birmingham, Montgomery, everywhere. We were going through the same process of trying to get the community to wake up and be aware of what this man was doing. And in my opinion, it was worth it.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Because you had an effect on me. There's no question about it. I cannot thank you enough for being on this show today. It has been an absolute pleasure for me. And to hear these stories.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask you, if you don't mind, as we finish off today, could you sing a little bit, sing us off today? With your favorite song from the show.
I don't mind, first of all,
singing
something from the show. What I want to say was, one of the issues that I've been traveling around the country discussing is the fact that I was an openly gay person. It took a while for that to come out, because Fred Rogers asked me not to come out publicly because he didn't feel the promoters like Heinz 57 and Johnson & Johnson and some of the companies would support an openly gay person on a children's television program.
Yeah.
I didn't have to change. I just could not be openly gay. By that, having a relationship or saying certain things. And I respected that, and I honored it. And so for 20 to 25 years, I never, ever let on. I kept a low profile publicly so that I didn't want people to have something for their scandal sheets or to be cheap. First of all, because who I am, and secondly, because what the program was about.
Sure.
It wasn't about something cheap like that.
Wow.
And I didn't want any hint of scandal. So I just simply put that away for some 20-something years. And once again, I do write about that in my book, because the thing that I probably miss most about my youth growing up in Youngstown, I was born in the South, is that I didn't have what I would consider a role model. A healthy, good role model. And that's what I propose to the kids as I travel. Not to tell someone you should be this or you should not be that. Simply that I'm here. I happen to be a gay person. A lot of my mail I get comes from trans and from gay boys and from lesbian women who say, my life has been totally different now that I realize the relationship that you're gay and the relationship you have with Mr. Rogers and that he loved you.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it really is important. Our audience, we have a lot of our audience is younger, and they don't understand that, because back in that time you didn't talk about it. These days we can talk about it, but we didn't, and so I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Though, yeah. And it depends on how much time we're going to get Freddie Mercury, for example, who's gay at the time, and he's bisexual, and though he was the lead singer of Queen and died from AIDS in 1991, so, and he did the same thing as Francis did, so, in trans, so, but, that's just me. Continue on.
Well, I just thought it would be important thing for people to know about me because it is who I am.
Sure.
And I'm very comfortable that's who I am. I've grown and I've changed, and I'm very grateful that I'm still alive while I can be myself. It was not easy, so to speak, being in the closet.
Wow.
All those years. So I consider it a sacrifice, but it was well worth it. When I read about some of the other great musicians and artists and painters and dancers and directors who had to stay in the closet, I feel very sad for us because it means you don't have a certain kind of fulfilled life.
Right, you can't be yourself.
No, you cannot. And they're asking you to make almost an ultimate sacrifice. It's a real challenge.
Well,
By the way, I just almost all of the reviews that talk about the book, they add that element. There was one just came out yesterday about in one of the gay publications, National,
yes.
where they were saying how well it's handled and it's honest, and they're glad, they're very happy. And so many people where I go say, let's talk about that, please. We've been wanting to discuss that. I've also done Skype for Florida, for Texas, for Ohio. Where else? A number of places where I've actually had class right here in my office.
Oh, that's
If you watch this, Kane, this is for you. Continue on.
wonderful. Well, we will put the link out so that everyone can go find your book, and I'm going to go get it and read it. I can't wait.
Though, I'm just looking forward till I do a book review about it coming soon. Continue on.
To read the book. So if you don't mind, do you mind singing us out today?
No, it's let's see. You wanted a Mr. Rogers song.
Yes, just for my.
Before you came, I practiced a spiritual.
Well, we can do the spiritual also. I just love listening to your voice.
Oh, aren't you nice? He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the whole round the world right in his hand. He's got the whole world right in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the sun and the moon, Lord, in his hand. He's got the sun and the moon, Lord, in his hand. He's got the sun and the moon, Lord, in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the going and the coming, y'all, in his hand. He's got the going and the coming right up in his hand. He's got the going and the coming right up in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got you and me right up in his hand. He's got you, Lord, me right up in his hand. He's got you and me right up in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand.
What an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Francois.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thank you for asking me.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
So that was Purple Roads, episode 16. What do I think about this video? It was amazing. So far, it went to be a success. Anyways, guys, that was episode for LJPCBM, episode number 444. Hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for the next one, which is going to be episode 445. Either one of those Day 3000's content, or it's going to be Luke's a Cool Guy content. So, excuse me. Till next time, so Jerry, goodbye, peace out, baby. We can watch react to you guys very soon. Till then, Jefferson out. See ya. Man. what am I gonna do with this? Anyway. Okay. There we go. We got it. Let's see if I'm done editing this by... By the time we finish editing this, then... Let's see... Closing credits... Almost done here. He's more of a children's person, but anyway. Mel is my thing, but you know. Move. Anyway. Then we're gonna do is save the episode, and we're done. So now let's see. We got 4 episodes left now, or 3, and then we're gonna do some things. But anyway, I'll be right back. You know what, something? I'm getting a little bit tired, so I'll see you tomorrow for June 2020, day number 83. See ya.